Hey ladies, got a struggle? Need to vent? It's time to join your voice and get down to business with some critical thought, where like-minded ladies share their personal experiences to empower each other, using critical thinking to make wise decisions. And now, here's your host, Lady C.
Hi, this is Lady C, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Struggles of Jehovah's Witness Women. And today on our program, we have a very interesting young lady. She comes with a diverse background, speaking 3 to 4 languages fluently. She's not like most of the people that I've had on my show so far, in the sense that she was not born or raised in the organization. Instead, living in the United States, coming from France, she and her family encountered a Jehovah's Witness, and she's here to tell her story about how the things in her life transpired that made her a victim of the Watchtower's teachings. Please join me in welcoming Sylviane Nuccio. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Sylviane, tell us, where is your country of origin? Where were you born and raised?
Well, I was born and raised in France.
What was life like for you, living in France? What was it like? That sounds like an exciting place to live.
Well, I had a very happy childhood besides the school part. But at home I was very happy, even though I had lost my father. I was 5 years old. My brother was 2. We grew up with my mother and my aunt, her sister, who was single and lived with her. My mother, she never ever remarried. So I grew up basically my brother, my aunt, my mother, and that's why we were very close.
And so what was it like? Did you practice a religion at that time?
Well, in France, the major religion is Catholic. So my mother, if you would ask my mother, she would say, well, I'm a Catholic. But she will also say, but I don't like priests. I don't like anything about this religion. But we never went to church but for weddings and funerals, but that's about it. We did get baptized, my brother and I, as babies, as Catholics do. And then I did get married in a Catholic church on my first marriage.
Now, when you talk about, your mother, your aunt, and your brother and yourself, it was just the 4 of you. You didn't have any extended family that lived in France?
Oh, yes. I did grow up with a huge extended family.
Okay. So basically, none of your family had any connections to Jehovah's Witness, right?
None of them.
Okay.
None of them at all.
Now, when I spoke to you and we talked about your childhood, you had some issues growing up with children bullying you. Would you say that this happened before or after your father passed away?
It started at age 4, and I was 5 when my father died. Believe it or not, another little girl, 4 years old, and already very vicious and jealous and mean, that was bullying me. And it lasted all the way until age 16 when I left school to go to drama school. In drama school, that never happened.
Well, were there any other children that were bullying you at this time?
At the time, she was pretty much the worst one, so she's really the only one I really truly remember. Most of them, thankfully, they were not as mean as her. But as I went to higher grades, children being older, as they were getting older, they were also getting meaner. So after that, it was not just one, but pretty much the whole class, besides maybe a couple or so.
Did you have any idea why they were doing this bullying? What was the source of that?
Yeah, I did. I tended to be tall for my age. My whole childhood, I was tall. I was kind of skinny, and I was well dressed. Always, because my mother was a tailor, and she also, for her, it was a great money saving. She would sew a lot of our clothes for me and my brother. Let's say, you're dressing up your kids with like big brand kind of clothes, because it was better looking and we had more of them than the average kid. So all that together, they just made those kids hate me.
Mm-hmm. So you feel like a lot of the people in your area were not as affluent as your family?
You know what? It's very interesting. My whole childhood, I remember people thinking that my mother was very wealthy, but actually she wasn't. We were not wealthy. We had a huge house that my parents had bought, but also she didn't have a mortgage, so we were living very comfortably, but people would think we were rich, but actually we were not rich. We were just comfortable and we looked good, I would say.
You know what? Perceptions are everything.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the world that we live in. If people perceive you have more than they do, then of
exactly.
course they are going to be jealous. They are going to have these issues.
And many of those people actually had way more than we did. My mother was not rich, but she chose to live well. When you make everything up to the clothes, that you wear, and not spending on stupid things, which my mother never did, you're actually able to save tons of money. But people do not understand that.
Right. And so based on your life experience, here you are, like a fatherless child. You're being raised by a single parent who is very frugal. You live around people who think you are rich. You're being bullied in school. So now this is shaping your life experience with people. And so then later on in life, you end up in circumstances based on what your experience was when you first started out in life, and that's what we're building this conversation up to be in terms of, what your life was like before became
And I want to specify
Witnesses.
that even though I was a happy child, I had many side effects of the bullying. And I had many stomach problems, which eventually turned out to blow into an ulcer when I was about 15 years old.
Well, what did your teachers do in the classroom when these kids were doing all of this bullying?
At the time, teachers, at least in France, as far as I know, they were clueless as far as bullying and the damages that bullying does to kids. And it's interesting, my mother, by the way, always encouraged me to kick those kids. She would say, and I may shock some people, but to make me stronger because she saw me so weak, she would say, kick them. And the reason why she would say that is that her mother taught her the opposite. Was teaching her not to defend herself, and she hated that. So she taught me the opposite, and she would tell me, kick them, hit them, I don't care what you do, defend yourself. But for some reason, I don't know, I had some fear, tremendous fear I must have had, because I never defended myself.
How is it that you all ended up in the United States?
Well, two reasons, really. At the time, I was acting in the theater, but, when you are a starting actor, basically, you do a lot of small jobs like you have your day jobs and your night job is acting. I was thinking, well, since foreigners are taking my jobs in my country, maybe I should go to another. And the second is, since I had that feeling already, I was like, well, maybe I could try to do what I'm doing as far as the acting thing in New York City, see what happens. So as crazy as it sounds, that's why I moved from Paris to New York.
Did you go by yourself?
Yeah, I went by myself.
At what age were you when you decided to go to the United States?
I was actually 27 when I moved to the United States.
And did you know anybody here prior to coming?
No, I did not.
So how did you get set up when you got here?
My mother was helping me financially.
So you were really a go-getter and a person that wasn't afraid to explore new horizons because, not many people would want to relocate to a new country not knowing anyone. So that's a big leap of faith. When you were living in the United States, your mother and your aunt came to visit at some point, and your brother, right? Because your brother was still in France, right?
My brother did come the following year for a month, and we actually flew from New York to Denver, and then we rented a car and we traveled all across the United States for 3 weeks. My mother and aunt visited me 3 months out of the year, over 15 years, and stayed with me in New York.
Okay, nice.
Yep.
So now, how is it that you all came in contact with the Jehovah's Witnesses?
One day, my mother and aunt, they were sitting and talking and waiting for me. A French brother who lived very close to Bethel passed by. And being in New York, you hear two people speaking French and you're French yourself. Well, that's gonna right away, you're going to notice. So he turned around and start conversation. Oh, you're French, I'm French, blah, blah, blah. So they spoke, according to my mother, at least for a good 20, 30 minutes of many different things, nothing to do with religion whatsoever. And at the end of the conversation, before he leaves, he gives them a tract. And I remember very well those tracts with the paradise on it, those little tracts, very little ones.
Yes.
And he tells them in a few words about Bethel and how he lives next to that place. And he explained to them, basically that's the headquarters of Jehovah's Witnesses. And by the way, you can come visit. Do you want to come visit? And I'll take you there. So my mother said, well, I don't know. I'm at my daughter's house. I will ask her. So when we got back home, my mother tells me about this conversation with this brother. She tells me he's a Jehovah's Witness, and he invites us to go to Bethel, blah, blah, blah. And I remember she even asked me, do you know that Bethel thing? And I said, no, I've never heard of it. But I said, yeah, sure, why not? And that's how we decided to accept his invitation. So I went to Bethel before I ever stepped foot in a Kingdom Hall, actually.
So that's one of the biggest things that the society wants people to do, is they want people to get to Bethel because it's very impressive. And when you see all of those buildings and everything, you're almost like sold on the spot. How did you feel when you walked in the door?
Well, it's fun. We felt it was very clean and organized. We felt the people so kind, so friendly. 3 things that will attract me and my mother. Unfortunately, we like clean stuff, we like organized, and we like friendly people. So right away, we liked it. And I remember that just for a second, we did say, isn't it a cult? Because in France, to this day, witnesses are called a cult. But it's funny how as soon as we said it, we just almost forgot it, even though it was in our mind,
That's the reason why I wanted to talk about your childhood and the bullying and all of that, because you all had this experience with these mean people over in France, and now here you are, and you said they're clean, organized, friendly people.
Yeah.
There you are.
Yeah.
They're looking for people who have problems or who have had issues in the past.
And I know it now, even if consciously a witness is not trying to get someone that's miserable in their lives, those are the people they're going to attract, because if someone is completely satisfied with their lives, he's not or she's not going to buy into that cult. But my mother was not that happy. My aunt was the same. I wasn't that happy either. So we were a group of 3 women here that were not satisfied with life. We missed something. So we were the perfect candidates, I'd say.
When you were living in France, do you recall witnesses coming to your home?
Oh, yeah. My mother would sometimes let them in. They would sit at the table. They would talk to my mother about the Bible. But somehow my mother never bought it back then. Sometimes she would see them coming by the window, and I will never forget my mother say, oh, the Jehovah's Witnesses again. So the Jehovah's Witnesses came in our house at least a handful of times during my childhood that I remember. But it's interesting, as you were mentioning earlier, when you go to another country, well, all of a sudden it's the same cult, it's the same sect, but we bought it. I don't know what happened. That I could not tell you.
You know what? See, when you moved to the United States, did you get involved with a group of people or have a network of friends that you were associated with?
No, besides the acting group I was in, we were going out together, but it was very seldom.
So you really did not have a social network?
No, I did not.
Tell me this, what was the next step after Bethel?
That same brother invited us to the next meeting, which was a Sunday meeting, the public talk in the Watchtower. And believe it or not, from that meeting, I almost never missed another meeting, ever. almost until the time I left. Unfortunately, we lacked it. I have to say, I mean, we did. But what we lacked was not so much what we heard. What we lacked, it was the same thing we lacked at Bethel. We lacked that clean place with nice people in it. I mean, I swear, that's what we really lacked that.
So when you went to the congregation, your congregation, was it a French-speaking congregation?
Yeah, and it's interesting how actually as long as my mother and aunt were there, we attended that French congregation. But I remember saying to that brother, as soon as my mom and aunt are going, I'm going to English. Because at the time I could still improve my English for sure. So I was not about to lose my time in some French group. So I thought I'd kill two birds with one stone, you know. Yeah, I'll learn that stuff about the Bible, but I'll learn it in English.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. And as soon as my mother and aunt left, I joined a adorable congregation I ever had. Never had one like that before. So the first English congregation I was in, I loved it. Loved everybody.
So that was a good support group for you based on what you've been through in your childhood.
Yeah, that was the perfect trap to get into a cult because the congregation was lovely. Everybody was nice. We had the most gorgeous Bethelites, which for a young woman is not bad at all either. They would, since also I was, you know, like a pretty girl, and they would be like always around me and invite me. I remember going in many Bethelites' room and having dinner with them, you know, not just one, but a little group.
So you went from being on the bottom of the list to being on the A list.
Exactly. that is, you see, that's amazing. So
right.
It's funny because when Jehovah's Witnesses always talk about Satan, well, if there is one, he worked very good on that one with me.
Mm-hmm. Right,
you know
right.
what I mean?
Exactly. So
Yeah.
now they got you hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's amazing. And like when you and I talked the other day and you said a lot of people were born and raised in it, and then you came in as an adult, and it's all about the problems that you had and experienced in your life that was able for them to catch you off guard.
Yeah, you know.
Okay. You were married in France, right?
Well, I was married in France, but by the time I moved to the United States, I was already divorced for years.
Did you ever get married to a brother in the organization?
Interestingly, someone that I used to know before, we actually lived together before we were both witnesses. I became a witness, and he became a witness, and after that, we got married.
How did you meet your husband?
We met in a French restaurant, and he was a sous chef there. 3 years before I became a witness, and 4 years before he became a witness.
Oh, I see. So the person that you married really was not affiliated with the witnesses prior to meeting you?
Yeah.
What was the nationality of your husband?
So he was actually from Mexico City. He was Mexican, and he had become American citizen. My husband, for a Mexican, was tall and white, like very fair skin as well. So as far as together, you know, we did not mismatch or whatever, you know. Yeah, and that's why we went to a Spanish congregation.
Oh, I see. So you started out in French, then you switched to the English congregation, and then when you got involved with your husband and you guys got married, you ended up in a Spanish-speaking congregation.
Which a congregation which I never liked. As much as I loved the first congregation, I truly did not like, I'm not going to say hate, but I did not like that Spanish congregation at all.
So now, how long did he last in the organization?
So, our marriage lasted only 4 years. He committed adultery, so that was a good way out for me. He admitted to me that he never loved Jehovah, that it was a total fake. So that's another thing, you know, Jehovah's Witnesses have to know that there are some witnesses that are total fake. Because if there is one, there are more than one. And I know this one for a fact. And by the way, he became a ministerial servant. So when Jehovah's Witnesses believe that you have to have the Holy Spirit and that stuff to be a ministerial servant or an elder, well, I know for a fact my ex-husband became a ministerial servant and admitted to me that he never loved Jehovah and faked the whole thing.
That's an interesting statement. And you know what? It just goes to show that anyone can go through the motions. And as you can see, he must have done all of the right things in the eyes of the brothers in order to promote him up the chain like that.
He had everything they loved because he was not speaking too much. He was saying yes, yes, yes a lot, seeming very soft spoken. So he had all the things they love about someone.
But then again, you know what? Some people don't realize what goes on with certain religions, and they don't understand. You know, sometimes when you go to the mainstream religions, it's not as demanding. And so he probably thought, oh, it's just a religion, I'll try this out, not realizing the demands that it places on people. And I think that's what a lot of people don't realize about the Jehovah's Witnesses. How many congregations were you affiliated with when you were one of Jehovah's Witnesses?
I was affiliated with 5 congregations: English, Spanish, French, English, and Korean.
Wow, you've been all over.
That's just the story of my life.
Right.
I kept doing the same thing even as a witness.
And because you were with multiple congregations, could you see the differences in how Jehovah's Witnesses operated in these various congregations?
Yes. Well, I would say, not all Jehovah's Witnesses is equal. You have different elder personalities. You have really different spirit, different energy that each congregation is showing. You can feel that usually pretty quickly. And the Spanish congregation, for example, I've never felt okay in there ever. And there was a couple, it was an elder and his wife. They were very toxic to me, for example.
So you started to notice that things were going down when you were changing from that very first congregation that you attended, that everybody that claimed to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses or the congregations in themselves weren't necessarily, all what they were all chalked up to be.
Yes, definitely. I've never found that family type spirit, that good energy that was in my first congregation, never found that again, ever. And the Spanish congregation came down to be a very depressing place to me. The French congregation came down to be a very depressing place to me. The second English was a catastrophe by the end of it. And the Korean congregation, same thing, started okay. And then it just was not it. Something was wrong with each of these congregations except for the first one.
Okay. And so then by you going to these different congregations, you can definitely say that there were cracks in the foundation of you wondering whether or not this was really the truth.
Oh, yes, yes.
So now, what was the pivotal moment in your life that really got you thinking about whether or not you were in the right organization?
Well, even though, how Jehovah's Witnesses always say, when you complain about some behaviors, they say, well, we're not perfect or they're not perfect. But after a while, when you see so many people that are not right, in so many levels, there is no more room. In my head, I had no more excuse for them. I was like, this is not possible. This is not possible that Jehovah picked all those bad people. There's too many of them. I'm okay with 1 case, 2 cases here and there, few cracks, but so many cracks. After a while, when you collected that many congregations as I did and always see the badness of those people, what's wrong with them? Actually, sometimes you're thinking, but they are worse than people in the world. It's not possible that those people belong to God. So okay. That really was the big crack for me.
But you know what I think? You know what I think that my husband always says that when we talk about the Jehovah's Witnesses, people always say that Jehovah is going to clean his organization up in the due time. And so a lot of people, when they talk about how bad people are in the congregation, they say that's a weak excuse. But you know what my thing is about that? I feel like if that's what wakes me up to see that these people are so mean and rude and they're not showing love, if that's the major crack in the foundation that will get me on the internet and start me doing my Google search about this religion, that's good enough for me.
Exactly.
No
matter what it is, whatever it is for you, it works fine,
right.
As long as something sparkles.
Exactly, because most witnesses will say, that's just that brother, he didn't show love, but Jehovah is not going to let him be in the new system. And so then people be quiet, they shut up, they go back to going to the Kingdom Hall.
For years I've heard, they're not perfect, but after 10 years I'm not perfect, I got tired. I'm like, I don't want to be with them.
Yeah.
I was to a point that I still had a doubt, that it may still be everything true and everything that it was. But the thing is, I did not want to be with those people, not in this system and not even in the next. I just didn't want to be with them. That's how bad it was.
Right. And my thing about it is this. When you think about the way that they treat you, and I look at people and they say, well, they're not Jehovah's Witnesses. So let's say my neighbors, people on my job, and they're not Jehovah's Witnesses, but they weren't as miserable as I was.
Exactly.
I mean, they're not Jehovah's Witnesses, but they seem like they were happier than me.
I know.
You got your family members looking at you and saying, you're not doing enough for Jehovah. You're not spending more time out in the field ministry. And you're being judged every other day because you're not doing enough Watchtower stuff. And yet the same people that you said weren't Jehovah's Witnesses and didn't have his blessing, they were walking around with a smile on their face, and Jehovah's Witnesses were walking around looking sad.
I noticed that too. After a while, you start thinking of that. Why are those worldly people happier than me? Something's wrong.
Yeah. And so it's like, so my thing is, at some point, people have to start waking up and listening or looking and seeing what's going on, because you can't keep living in a bubble.
No.
You know? Yeah. And that's the main thing that people need to really see is that they need to start looking at why they're not happy.
Yeah.
Because they say Jehovah's people are supposed to be the happy people.
Yeah. That's what they say.
That's right. My mother-in-law said that way before we left. She said that they always say that Jehovah's people are the happiest people in the world. And she said she would look around in her congregation and she would say, these are the most miserable people in the world.
Exactly.
And that was the way she felt.
For the most part, yes. Mm-hmm. I agree.
Absolutely.
That's what I thought. I thought the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm. Which congregation were you in last?
The Korean congregation.
Did you know how to speak the language?
No, not at all when I started. I did learn the alphabet that you can learn pretty quickly in about a week. But the language is so different from a Latin type language or even English, which English also has Latin roots anyway. So yeah, it's very, very hard to learn. You're going to be unable to speak and unable to understand for a while, at least for a year.
Okay, so how long did you go to that congregation?
I was there for 2 years.
So you're sitting in the Korean congregation having a hard time understanding what's going on. So now what's happening to your mind as you're sitting there?
What's happening, very interesting, I heard another ExJW, it happened to him. It happened to me, obviously. When you go to a foreign language congregation and you do not understand for such a long time, for over a year, well, what happens is, even though you're reading your magazine in a language you do understand, you stop hearing the brainwashing. You are actually not indoctrinated anymore for a while. You don't even know that's happening, but that's happening. So it's easier to keep your distance, I would say, with the teaching of Jehovah's Witnesses, because you are in all your meetings, but what you hear is wah, 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 you're not understanding what they're saying. And that's great. That really, I think that helped me to be less indoctrinated.
So it's like your brain is thawing out.
Yeah, and it's like your faith is dying. In a way it is, it's the faith that is based on the indoctrination of Jehovah's Witnesses is really dying. It does work. In this case, we know now it's a good thing.
Did you ever go on the internet to find any information about the organization?
No, I never when I was one of Jehovah's Witnesses did that. You know how they scare you about apostate information? One day just by accident, I remember finding, it was like in 2002, finding something, and right away I could tell it was an apostate site. And I got so scared, I just clicked out from the page. That's how scared you are when you are one of Jehovah's Witnesses of apostate information. So no, I never dared looking when I was one of JW's.
What made you do research about the religion?
So research that happened much later on for me. I left the organization of Jehovah's Witnesses still thinking that if there was one true religion, that was it. And I lived like this for 10 years. Even though I did not believe it was the true religion, I still thought it was a good religion. And I would defend every time I would defend the Jehovah's Witnesses.
So you stopped going to the Kingdom Hall in what year?
I stopped going to the meetings in 2006.
So now you just start living your life.
Yeah, I managed to live my life, not being fearful of being destroyed, or I was okay. Even if, I was okay with the fact, okay, just destroy me at Armageddon as long as I'm not with those people anymore.
But you didn't have a confirmation that this wasn't the truth yet.
Not 100%.
Okay.
Okay, the way I was back then, I was still not awake. I was just discovering things about life that match my personality at the time much better than the teaching of Jehovah's Witnesses. So that's the only thing I was telling my mom and brother, well, they're teaching me about the law of attraction and why bad things happen to people and how God has nothing to do, or the devil has nothing to do with that and stuff like that. And they did not like that because it was not matching what Jehovah's Witnesses teach. My life coach, was teaching me about life. But unfortunately, back then I did not know that Jehovah's Witnesses were a complete cult. I did not know it that way.
Okay. And then keep in mind, you're talking on the phone. Were you emailing them or were you talking on the telephone?
My mom and I had the opportunity to talk to them face to face, but
Okay.
my brother, no, that has never been face to face. That was just over the phone.
Your mother and your aunt and your brother, they find out that you're talking against the organization. How did they start to treat you at that time?
Yeah, my mother treats me completely the same, and my aunt too. It's my brother and my sister-in-law that start to act a little bit different towards me. And then my mother was diagnosed with a beginning of Alzheimer's in summer of 2006.
Okay.
One day I'm talking on the phone to my aunt, and my brother texts the phone. He says, you are an apostate. And really at the time I wasn't. I am now, but I wasn't at the time at all, because an apostate is someone who's fully awake. For the most part, I was not at all. So even though I had done nothing pretty much, he says I am an apostate.
So he just stopped speaking to you?
So pretty much, yes. From that day, I've never heard the voice of my brother anymore. The big problem is the pillar of the family. My mother is losing her head very rapidly. Very quickly, my mother has no say in anything. So my brother takes advantage of that and takes control. As I'm in the United States, shunned by my brother, knowing my mother is sick, I'm sending him emails, asking him questions. All he does for months on hand is sending me awful pictures of my mother getting worse and worse physically and mentally, with sometimes very little to no comment at all. After a few months, I even asked about my aunt, because by then I have no more news of my aunt. I don't know if she's well. I don't know anything about her. I'm asking him, how is our aunt? He refused to tell me. He's not telling me how my aunt is.
And you don't think to get on a plane and go home? Or the circumstances are not,
Yeah, well, the problem is, as we all know, that when we are Jehovah's Witnesses, we usually are pretty broke, because we have given our everything to that cult, and we don't have a good job, and we don't have the money. So back then, even though right now I'm pretty much traveling the globe, back then I could not. I was stuck because I could not leave my job. I was very stuck financially, and because of my job, and also because I was, shunned, everything together. Unfortunately, I was not able back then. Mm-hmm. That's a shame, but
right.
I was not able to go to France, see my mother.
So go ahead and finish telling the story. So now what happens as time progresses?
I receive an email that I'm reading from my desk at my job, an email from the lawyer telling me that my mother has died.
That's so sad. That's the culture of this religion, that because someone decides that they no longer believe that the governing body speaks for God, or they can interpret scripture and all of that, Now this is how you treat your family.
Yeah. You are treated like trash. You are no worth any more than a piece of trash. And it has to be that when you don't even feel like telling your own sister that her mother has died.
And see, the thing is, the religion itself, it does not know how to show people boundaries. But shunning, to me, shouldn't be done anyway.
Yeah.
But when they create these hard, fast rules, you have different people that they really adhere to them more so and more stringent.
Exactly.
Yeah,
True.
more stringent than other people. And
True.
so some people take it to a whole new level.
Exactly. If they were smart enough, they would know just that. They would know that different people receive information different ways. You know, when it falls on the ears of someone like my brother, he's going to take it to a whole new level. Mm-hmm. I mean, to this day, my brother has not told me my mother has died. Yeah. I still know it from that email. I still do not know it from my brother.
So it's really, really sad that you're having to go through this. Now, at what point did you actually get a confirmation that this was not the truth?
Well, the confirmation, I got it gradually. What happens is I used to work with a Christian guy. He was very Christian, not Jehovah's Witnesses, but he had a very good knowledge of the Bible, and he was a friend of mine. And oftentimes he would talk to me about the Bible, but I realized that it did not match at all what Jehovah's Witnesses believed in most cases. And actually, he's the only one. He knew. I told him that I used to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and he used to tell me all the crazy stuff that Jehovah's Witnesses believe and how it's not true. So he started giving me some information, but I would still defend Jehovah's Witnesses. When I really found out everything about the Jehovah's Witnesses organization, it's just at the beginning of this year when I was fed up with my brother shunning me, wanting to get some answers, and went online and discovered all the lies and trickeries of the society.
Oh, so you just found out this year?
Yeah, in February. It's very recent. You know, I started to think, something is wrong with those people and the Bible. It doesn't match. Because of that friend of mine, telling me for like 3 or 4 years, telling me stuff. But yeah, really waking up, what we calling waking up from the organization this past February.
That's amazing, because all the time that he was talking to you, you never thought to go on the internet to go and check out what he was saying?
No. And never did I check them online, never.
So for all the people that's listening to this program right now, I am encouraging you not to wait 10 years like Sylviane did to find out the real truth about the truth. Go on the internet and check things out for yourself. Wouldn't you agree?
Definitely. The thing is, I never thought there were so many secrets about the organization. Now I found some stuff that maybe many apostates have not even found yet. I'm talking about that in my last video, as a matter of fact. I found stuff that I don't even want to talk about, so bad and so dark. But when you don't know, you don't know. And I guess that's why I was not even curious enough to dig and see what's going on. I mean, I really discovered, I was shocked. I had no idea.
So, Sylviane, when you finally went online to do your research about Jehovah's Witnesses, did you discover any interesting websites?
I found a JW survey, JW fact. I found all those sites and more videos, and that's how I found you, ExJW Critical Thinkers, which I really love, by the way.
Oh, thank you. When you left Watchtower and you faded, how did your life change for the better?
Well, my life changed for the better because you can think for yourself. You have no more no-nos, you can't do this, you can do that, you can think that way. So I started becoming very interested in personal development. And 3 years later, I became a certified life coach, and I'm helping people to have a better quality of life, more success in their lives. I would have never, ever become a life coach if I had been one of Jehovah's Witnesses.
So what type of life coaching are you doing?
Success coaching, even relationship coaching. I teach people how to use the energy that's around them better to attract more success, to attract even more money, to attract the men of their dreams, things like that. Any areas where people are looking for success, whether it's better relationship, better career, more money, or more joy, more happiness.
Okay, good. And how can people get in touch with you if they want to utilize your services?
They can go to my website, sylvianenuccio.com, and click on Coaching for Success.
Okay, so that's Sylviane Nuccio. And for those of you in the audience, that's www.sylvianenuccio.com. Sylviane is an author. And Sylviane, you want to let our listeners know what books you've written?
Well, the book that is right now on Amazon, it's called Transform Your Life in 14 Days.
Okay, good. So they can go to Amazon.com and get that book?
Yes, if they go on Amazon and type my name again, basically my name is my brand. So if anyone type my first and last name, they'll find everything I ever done online. So on Amazon, by typing Sylviane Nuccio, they'll find my book.
Okay, excellent. So leaving the Watchtower has helped you to step out on the world scene and help other people, something that you weren't doing before. Because in talking to you, it was like your whole life was just dying before you because you weren't happy, you weren't able to fulfill your own dreams and desires. But not only are you doing that now, but you're helping other people, which I think is really good.
Yes. Yes, and that's definitely something actually I almost started doing before I became one of Jehovah's Witnesses. But you know very well that when you become one of Jehovah's Witnesses, your life stops. So it's basically I resumed my life that really started 10 years before that, but that's the way it happened for me.
And I think what you just said was very interesting, too, because, you know, here you were coming from a foreign land to a country that you had not been to before, trying to get a start. You run into people that, you know, you think are nice because you had dealt with these mean people from your other country, all to join a group of people that stopped you from actually living.
Yes.
And there's a lot of people out here right now that are in the same boat. You know, they think that, you know, they meet a Jehovah's Witness that seems to be nice. They feel like these people are someone that they want to be affiliated with because they're just so nice. And then you belong to the group and all of a sudden you find out that you can't do all of these things.
Yes, and at the beginning, I had the feeling that they had the answers to my questions, to my deepest questions in life. But, you know, it turned out that it was not true. But they're very skilled. You know, it really seems that they have the answers to your deepest questions.
What advice would you give to people who come in contact with Jehovah's Witnesses today?
Well, nowadays, definitely check them out. If you have Jehovah's Witnesses coming to your door, type Jehovah's Witnesses in Google. There's only one result that's Jehovah's Witnesses. Everything else is people that will tell you the truth about Jehovah's Witnesses. You know, definitely once you do that, I don't think you would want to waste your time in this organization.
I was talking to a lady the other day, and I said people will go on the internet to get a Yelp review about a $10 steak dinner, but they will not go on the internet to check out an organization that's going to change their life. You know, it's amazing. So I definitely recommend that everything in your life, you know, from, you know, buying a toy for your child to find out what the reviews are, to getting that $10 steak dinner, to changing to a religion that you have no information about.
And do it early before you become completely indoctrinated, and then you are not going to believe what you hear. Do it before that happens.
That's exactly right. I really feel like you got cut short because you came to this country for an opportunity. And before your opportunity could even start to work for you, you got involved with an organization that literally stopped you in your tracks.
Yes, yeah, completely.
You know? How do you feel today?
Today I feel great. I feel free. I mean, I've been free for 10 years. It's great to feel free. And also another thing, very important, I do not judge people anymore. Because you are so judgmental when you are one of Jehovah's Witnesses, that's incredible. You do not judge people. Your mind opens up. It's amazing.
Exactly. Yeah. And, oh, by the way, I don't want to forget that Sylviane has a YouTube channel talking about her experiences in the Watchtower organization. So, Sylviane, you want to explain what that's all about?
The channel is Living Now, because that's what I'm doing, living now. So it's very easy to remember, living now, as opposed to in the new system.
Oh, good. Okay. Do you have any of these videos in foreign languages?
Yes, I have some in French and most of them in English.
That's great, because I think a lot of people need to know more about this religion in different languages. Well, I'm so glad that you were able to come on our program today and share your story, because there's so many people out there that need to get this information. So I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Lady C, for having me in your show and giving me the opportunity to share my experience with you and your audience.
And we were very happy to have you on our program. Thank you so much.
If you've been in the struggle and want to appear as a guest on our show, email us at exjwct@gmail.com.
This program was sponsored by Critical Thinkers.